In the last lesson, we looked at where chords come from within the scale. In this lesson, we're going to build upon that and learn how to create our own chord progressions. A chord progression is just a sequence of chords played in a succession. Here's an example of a few common chord progressions. Feel free to look some more up, but it's more fun to be able to create your own. Before we learn about chord progressions, we should look at the scale degrees. They are the tonic, the supertonic, the mediant, the subdominant, the dominant, submediant, and the leading tone. Both the subdominant and the dominant resolve very well to the tonic. Here's an example of the dominant resolving to the tonic in C major. And here's an example of the subdominant resolving to the tonic in C major. So now that we know that the dominant and subdominant resolve to the tonic, let's take a look at the E minor scale. Let's try to build our own chord progressions. In the first measure, we're going to start with the 1 chord. And in the last measure, we will end it with one of these 4 chords. But for now, let's focus on the 4 and 5 chords, because we just learned that they resolve well to the 1. For measures 2 and measures 3, just pick any random chord in the E minor scale. Here's an example of a chord progression where we end on the 5 chord and go back to the 1 chord. The chord progression we're using is a 1, a 7, a 6, and a 5. That gives us an E minor, D major, C major, and a B minor. Here's an example of that now. Now we're going to end our measure with the 4 chord. Here I chose the 1 chord, the 3 chord, the 6 chord, and the 4 chord. That gives us an E minor, G major, C major, and an A minor. Here's how that sounds. In the last lesson, I showed you how we could add more notes to our chord and get various different chords for our 1 chord and the rest of them. Let's apply this principle to the E minor chord and come up with a new chord progression using this technique. For this chord progression, I'm going to end on the 2 chord. And I'm going to play an E minor, a G sus4, an A sus2, and an F sharp diminished. Here's how that chord progression sounds. Not only can you strum these, but you can also pick them like in that example. Other ways we can learn chord progressions are circle progressions, and that takes the circle of fifths. And what we can do is just start at 1 chord and move backwards, or however we want, on the circle of fifths to come up with a new chord progression. This progression is a 2-5-1 progression. We can add in another note too, and that'll give us the 6-2-5-1 progression. One more way that we can come up with chord progressions is using a chord progression map. If you look these up, they're all over the internet. They look like this one. Basically what we do is just start anywhere on this, and say if we wanted to start at the 5, we could go either from the 5 to the 3, or the 5 to the 4, and then we just work our way down back to the 1 chord. Or what you could do is just play around and use your ear. Whatever sounds best to you is a good choice. In the next lesson, we're going to take a look at borrowed chords. I hope to see you guys there.